Grind retention is a phrase we use often when discussing the merits of different grinders. If you're not familiar, the concept is simple. As beans are ground, there are areas within the burr chamber where grounds can rest without being expelled into your portafilter. In this video, I'll be discussing the effects of grind retention, how to manage them, and comparing 8 different grinders in our lineup. In many grinders, this is an intentional design element that helps reduce static and maintain flow for consistent dosing. While there are benefits, there are also drawbacks to grind retention. Grounds retained in the burr chamber will lose freshness. This is an added variable for home baristas who aren't using the grinder as much as a cafe. This retention also means that an adjustment in grind size doesn't have immediate effect, with some particles from the previous grind setting making their way into your dose. Both of these issues can be solved by a quick purge before your first shot of the day. For those that wish to single dose their beans, some grinders can work exceptionally well. However, grind retention in certain models can make them challenging. So what does this mean for you? Whether you fill your hopper and use time dosing or single dose your beans, incorporating a purge into your routine is invaluable. If you make just a couple drinks in the morning, the next day, it's a good idea to purge a few grams of coffee, generally just a second or so of grinding with a full hopper. This will flush out the stale grounds from yesterday. If you don't, these stale grounds will cause your first shot of the day to be what is scientifically referred to as a gusher. The flow through the grounds will be far too quick, and your shot will be watery. Generally, if the gap between shots is around 12 hours or less, the effect is negligible. The greater a grinder's retention, the greater the impact, so we recommend purging a bit more coffee the more retention your grinder has. A grinder with minimal retention will help you marginally reduce waste by reducing the need for a purge. If you aim to single dose, then a grinder's retention is likely among the greatest determining factors in whether or not it will suit your needs. There's an added factor to consider beyond purging. The more retention a grinder has, the more variation in output you'll see. Generally, these variations peak at about 1 gram, and the best remedy is to stick to a consistent routine in order to ensure consistent output. Let's compare the retention of a few different grinders. Many tests we've seen start with a completely clean grinder and measure the amount of coffee retained after a single dose. This doesn't represent the amount of grounds that build up in normal use and paints an unrealistically favorable picture. Our goal with measuring retention is to quantify the amount of loose grounds that rest in a grinder in normal use. Whether you're using time dosing or single dosing, these grounds are what will impact your shots and therefore influence your routine. We ground 80 grams of coffee through each grinder until no more coffee was dispensed. We then opened the burr chamber and swept out all the loose grounds, including in the chute and behind the screen. We collected those grounds and then weighed them. This measurement is what we counted as the grinder's total retention. We'll start with the Sette 270 and Mignon Specialita. Small burrs make for small retention. The Sette 270, with its small conical burrs, has almost zero space to collect grounds, thanks to its innovative shape. Its unique burr assembly and incredibly short vertical chute work wonders, with retention of less than a gram. Altogether, this makes it one of the most effective single-dosing grinders on the market. The Eureka Mignon Specialita is a great example of a low-retention flat burr grinder. Its 55mm burrs are on the smaller end of the spectrum, and its impressively compact burr chamber leaves little room for buildup, with only about 1.3 grams of retention. This works wonders when single-dosing, a rare honor for a flat burr grinder. Now let's look at the Atom, T64, and Zenith. This price range contains the bulk of prosumer flat burr grinders. Most of these grinders have relatively large burrs and motors. They're built to produce very consistent grounds quickly. These larger burr chambers inevitably make for greater retention, but some designs mitigate that better than others. The Eureka Atom, for instance, has mid-size 60mm burrs with a very small gap between the burrs and the inner wall of the burr chamber. This, combined with Eureka's proprietary forked screen, which causes very little retention, means that despite being quite a bit larger than the first few grinders we looked at, it only retains around 2 grams. Though the Atom does have low retention, we don't recommend it for single dosing. It's designed with the weight of a full hopper of beans in mind, and some pieces, like the auger, make it far faster with a full hopper, but are counterproductive when single dosing. The T64 has 64mm burrs, but its chamber is also tight-fitting, meaning there's only a small gap for coffee to collect. Its 4.5 gram retention is a big jump from the smaller grinders we mentioned before, but let's compare it to something of its own caliber, the Eureka Zenith. It has 65mm burrs, just slightly larger than the T64, but more importantly, you can see that the gap surrounding the burrs is considerably larger. This key difference is what generates its 6.5 gram retention. In practice, this difference is nominal and entirely manageable with the same purge. Now let's compare the Olympus, the V-Titan, and the KRE. This price range contains grinders that are built to handle commercial use and are often built with top-notch materials and plenty of attention to detail. Having blazing speed and impressive consistency means that these grinders are not designed with single dosing in mind, and therefore have a good bit of retention. Let's start with the Eureka Olympus. It has huge 75mm flat steel burrs, but its burr chamber has the smallest gap between the inner walls and the burrs themselves. Additionally, Eureka's unique screen design and the immense torque of the Olympus's motor made for a surprisingly low retention of 3.5 grams. The burr chamber of the V-Titan is also designed to hug tightly around its large 64mm burrs, and has 4 paddles where most grinders have 2 or 3. This design leaves relatively little space for the grinds, so the V-Titan only has about 4.5 grams of retention. The Eureka KRE is unique in that it is one of a select few large conical burr grinders in our lineup. While it's one of our favorite grinders with the hopper full, it retains 12 grams of coffee, making it less than ideal for single dosing. Large conical burrs like these require the aforementioned purge, but they also benefit greatly from a more consistent routine. By ensuring that you grind for approximately the same time and use the same technique with each dose, you can ensure that you get an output within about 1 gram of your input. All in all, the extent to which grind retention matters to you depends on your preferred routine and how many drinks you're making in a day. For those that wish to single dose, choosing a grinder often involves balancing the benefits of larger burrs and motors with their requisite increase in retention. For those that use time dosing, it's simply a matter of understanding the amount of retention and knowing how much to purge to ensure consistently delicious results. We've used every grinder we sell extensively, so if you ever have grind retention questions regarding a specific grinder, feel free to leave a comment below or give us a call. We're happy to provide insight. If you feel like you've got a better understanding of grind retention after this video, be sure to hit the like button below, and if you want to keep up with our overview and educational videos, be sure to hit subscribe.